Hi guys, welcome to pre-algebra today. We are in our second lesson of this year and we should be writing in our table of contents. So please flip to the front of your journal, front pages. Pages 1 through 3 should say table of contents. This page should already be set up. 4 through 5, rational numbers. And you might want to add 1-1. So this will get you used to what chapter and lesson we're in. So chapter 1, lesson 1. And the textbooks that you should have taken home, that should cover this as well if you need extra practice or examples. Also need to add today 6 to 7, powers and exponents, lesson 2 in chapter 1, so 1-2. So go ahead and make sure you're writing this information down in your table of contents. This should be on page 1, the very front page of your journal. And so today, powers and exponents, you're actually going to be not writing on page 6. So on page 4 and 5, you glued on 4, wrote on 5. Today on page 6, it's going to be blank. So your left page, page 6 is going to stay blank. We will only be writing on page 7. So only one page of notes today. So flip open your journal to page 7. I don't have my journal today, so I'm using just notebook paper. And if that ever happens to you where you forget your journal, use notebook paper, fill out your notes, and then you can cut them out and glue them on. And that's what I will be doing. So this is page 7. And you're going to be gluing on this little page right here. So you should have grabbed this page from your teacher in class, or if you're absent or at home, you can print this page out. Okay, so expressing and evaluating powers. So we sure did talk about evaluating powers last year if you were in 7th grade. If you were a 6th grader, you should have touched base with exponents. So we're going to review some of this. Some of it should be not completely entirely new, but it's a refresher for you. So basically a product of repeated factors, we can write it in 2 forms. So if I repeat the factor 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, and factors are numbers that make a product, then I can rewrite it saying it is the same thing as 2 raised to the 4th power. And so we call these powers or exponents. And some of you might remember, or if you haven't heard it, the order of operations songs goes parentheses, exponents, parentheses, exponents. And I put my arm up in the air like I'm powerful, like I've got muscles. And that's that little guy right there, that little 4. So that exponent right there, that 4, tells you how many times you're going to multiply the base number. And that base is 2. So that 2 is the factor, also referred to as the base number. And the 4 says 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Now, the misconception is a lot of people think, oh, well, the answer is 2 times 4, which is 8, right? Well, no. Because 2 times 2 here gives me 4. And this 2 times 2 right here gives me 4. And 4 times 4 doesn't give me 8. 4 times 4 actually gives me 16. So we'll be talking on your classwork about how 16 would be the product of 2 to the 4th power, or the solution. And we use the word evaluate quite a bit. So to evaluate means to solve for. So the solution, or to evaluate 2 to the 4th power, that would be equivalent to 16, which would inform, when we talk about exponent form, this is called exponent form. This is called standard form when I actually solve and get one single value. Okay, so just a reminder here, taking a look at the powers on how to say it. So when I have 3 to the 1st power, that's how you read it, 3 to the 1st power, that tells me I just have 1 3. So the 1 says 1 of those 3s. 3 to the 2nd power says I have 2 3s. So 3 times 3, which happens to be 3 squared, is another way to say it, which this happens to equal 9. Then you have 3 to the 3rd power, also referred to as 3 cubed. So squaring and cubing have their own values that we name in we could name in 2 different ways. We could call it a power of 2, a power of 3, or we can say squared and cubed. And the reason why we differentiate these from other exponent values that we can read is because in the world of area and volume, we talk about area being square units because it's two-dimensional, and the 3 meaning volume because it's three-dimensional, a length, a width, and a height. And so these two relate to, in other ways, to area and also to volume. And when you talk distance, of course, that's to the first power, it's 1 unit. Let's move on to the 3 to the 4th power. This is read 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. It's not 3 times 4, which is 12. That would be incorrect. It would be 3 times 3, which is 9. This 3 times 3 is 9. And remember, commutative property says I can actually multiply these in any order that I want because it's all multiplication. 3 times 3 is 9. This 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 9 would give me 81. So these numbers rise really fast when they're raised to exponents. That's why we call it exponential growth, a really rapid growth, faster than just multiplying by digits or adding the digits repeatedly. 3 times 3 here is 9 times 3. This is actually 27. So you can see it's growing 3 times greater every time. Well, what happens when I just in algebra or pre-algebra want to just be generic? And it's kind of hard to read this, but this is 3 raised to the nth power. So that's a little n. So 3, and I'll just write over this to make it bigger. This is 3 to the nth power. And what that means is the n represents any value for infinity that I want to do. So 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, and I just keep going. And if you see this dot, dot, dot here, that's repetition. That means this is an ongoing value of 3 forever and ever and ever. And so we just write it 3 to the nth power. So 3 to whatever power, I'm just going to multiply 3 times 3 times 3 as many times as I need. Now on your calculator, the beauty of this year is that you're not having to do this by hand. You're actually calculating in a calculator, but you need to understand what raising to the exponent does to a value, and that is growing really fast. Now the only 3 up here I haven't exhibited was 3 to the 0 power, and I want to talk about that because it would actually go above here on the chart because it was just going down in sequential order. But 3 to the 0 power means I have no 3s. Well, a lot of people would say, okay, well then my answer would be 0, right? But actually that's incorrect. Because if I were to multiply all of these numbers by 0, I would get 0. And just a reminder, that exponent tells me how many times to use the base number. So what can I multiply 3 by to not change it? Well, 3 times 1 is 3. Can I multiply 9 times 1 to get 9? Yeah, it doesn't change the value. 27 times 1 gives me 27. So this goes back to a property you should have learned last year, which is the identity property, which states that anything times 1 remains itself. So in the case of exponents, if I don't have any 3s and it says there are 0 3s, I always have 1. It's not 0 because then I would be multiplying by 0 and my answer would forever be 0, and that's not what we want. So anything to the 0 power is 1. So I'm going to put down here any number in the world. I'm going to put n for any number raised to the 0 power will always and forever be 1. So keep that in mind. All right, some keywords for your classroom work today. Evaluate. Okay, big vocab word. You got to learn it now. Evaluate. Evaluate very simply means to solve. Get a solution. Give me an answer. So solve or find the value of the whatever you're working with. Find and solve it. You're also going to be using some pre-algebra skills with variables, and variables are letters that represent numbers. So we're going to make a little note here. When you plug in for a letter, and letters we call variables, okay? You're going to use parentheses, which look like that, right? Now, sometimes we use fancy parentheses, which are brackets, means the same thing. Now, I'm going to put a little note here because this is a reminder. When you plug in for a letter or variables, use parentheses. Okay, we're going to talk about how really important that is. So here's an example. If m equals 5, so just write if m equals 5 and n equals -2, and you're probably saying, well, what's m, what's n? They're just variables. We're going to evaluate. And here's what we're going to evaluate. M minus n squared, which really means m minus n to the second power. We're going to plug in for these variables the values of 5 and -2 respectively. So m is 5, so I write down 5, and we're going to put parentheses around it. Reason why is because I want to understand that that's a positive 5. Minus, and then the n. The n is -2. And where you have to be careful, and that -2 is going to be squared. The reason why you want to very carefully write this out is because in order of operations and working with subtraction, we know that a lot of times we add a line, change a sign, or keep, change. But the problem is this squaring has to happen first. And so when you're using the calculator and you don't put parentheses in, sometimes you can mess up the problem, because if I leave these parentheses off, it could be read 5 minus, and then, and I don't have it there, minus -2. I might just square the 2 and put the negative sign up front. So I need to understand that that -2 has to be squared. So -2 times -2. So -2 times -2. Well, when you have a negative times a negative, it's a positive. So just a reminder about baby face, in case you forgot. Here's baby face. That a negative times a negative is a positive, and you just cover up that negative, and that's a positive. So -2 times -2 is a positive 4. So this would be just a simple 5 positive. 5 minus 4 is 1. And just a reminder, you want to funnel this down as you're solving. Okay, so again, I'm going to write this over here. This is -2 being multiplied by -2, because it's 2 of the -2's being multiplied. And in order of operations, which is PEMDAS, I always have to do exponents first before I add or subtract. So this is just a little refresher on a few things. And now we're going to switch over to the classwork so you kind of know what's going to happen when you're working with your problems. So that should be your notes right there, and you can close your journal. Just listening along, and if you happen to get to this page and you need some reminders, you can go back to it and get some help. And we will be using the TI84, so you'll need that calculator handy, and we're going to be writing these things out. So on number 1, it says 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So you say, okay, how many 2's did I have? I had 4 of them. So to express it as an expression means it doesn't have an equal sign. It would be 2 raised to the 4th power, because there's 4 2's. It's that simple. I don't have to evaluate it. It doesn't say evaluate or solve. It just says write it. Express it means write it. Write each of these as an expression. There it is, my expression. Doesn't have an equal sign. Equations have equal signs. Your classwork will be to do the evens, so we're going to stay with the odds here. So I'm going to take a look, and I'm going to say, okay, how many 5's? Now, the reason I'm going to 5 first is because you usually go in order from smallest to largest. You don't have to, but it's nice to. I have the 5 how many times? There's 4 of them. So 5 to the 4th power times 7, and there's 2 of them, 7 to the 2nd power. Take a look at number 5. Stick with numbers before variables. How many 1/4 do I have? So I have 1/4, but how many times do I have it? Now, in the case of this one, I want to put it in parentheses because it's the whole 1/4 raised to the 3rd power, because there's 3 of them. And then times C, to how many C's do you have? 2. And that just helps you understand. Now, going back to the parentheses thing, because these were by themselves to the 4th power, you don't have to use parentheses there. And you don't actually have to use parentheses here. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. Take a look at number 7. How many 2's do I have? And I say 2 to that 1, 2, 3 power, 3 of them. How many 8's do I have? 8 to the second power. How many x's? X to the second power. Okay. Now, if you notice, we're not solving anything. We're just writing it out. Take a look. We've got 1/3. How many of them are there? 2. How many 4s do we have? 1, 2, 3. 4 to the third power, and then n's 1, 2, 3. And you can't solve n unless I tell you what n is. The bottom half of this, as we're going through some of the odds, says to evaluate. And again, evaluate means to solve. If you want to write that on your classwork, that would be really smart, but I'm going to solve it. So we're going to grab our handy dandy trusty calculator here. And on your TI84 Plus, the one key that you really need to know the most is this one right here for exponents. And I call it the carrot top or the house top. That's raising it like a house raises a roof. We're going to raise it to a power. So I type 4, so you hit your 4 button. It says 4, and then it says to the third power. So you notice I have a 4 there, and I'm going to hit this house top right here. When I do that, you look at the screen, you get a flashing little box up at the top. Put your 3 in the box, and you don't have to scroll down or over to the right, just hit enter. So reminder, enter buttons here. So you hit enter, and that should give you your solution, 64. So 4 to the third power, my solution is 64. We're just solving. Let's take a look at 13. -8 raised to the third power. Okay, so reminder on parentheses. Let's clear that for a second. The parentheses button can be found right above the 8, the closing parentheses above the 9. So it says I want to do -8 raised to the third power or cubed. So I do parentheses and make sure you're using the negative sign, which is this sign down here, right here. This is minus, this is negative. Okay, so hit the negative key, negative, and then we're going to put in -8, and we're going to raise it. So back to this button right here, the house top, this one right here, hit that one, and we're going to raise it to the third power, hit enter. And notice it gives me a negative. So the reason why it's giving me a negative is because it's negative. What this is saying is multiply -8 times -8 times -8. And it would really be old to do that each time, but I could. -8 times -8 times -8, and I should get the same answer. So cube means 3 of those multiplied. All right, let's take a look down at number 15. On this one says 2 to the 8th minus 3 squared. And this is just putting it in. So I type 2 raised to the 8th power, and then it's minus 3 squared. Now you can do 3 to the house top too, or with squaring, we do have this button here, and you can actually, oh, you know what? I'm making a mistake. So if you notice, I had everything in the box. Let me fix that. So it's 2 to the 8th power. I do have to scroll over to the right, because otherwise it sticks everything up in the exponent. So that's important. We know that. So it's a good thing that happened. So 2 to the 8th minus, and it said 3 squared. So I'm doing 3. And again, I can do the little house top and a 2, or I can hit this squared button right here. Okay, just make sure that cursor is not up top. I would have gotten a strange answer. And I get my answer, 247. So this equals 247. So let's try 17. Let's try that again. So we got 3. And again, you can do the house top, raised to the 4th. We have to on that one. You need to hit the right arrow over and then do minus. Now this is not a negative. This is a minus right here. And then parentheses. And some of you say, well, how do you know the difference? Well, and I know they look the same on the page. That's a negative, okay? Because it's attached to the 4. You don't do minus 4. So it's -4, and you can tell it's a littler here. Wish it was a little on the page, but it's not. And then you're squaring it. So back to squaring it, hit that button right there, or you can do the house top to the 2nd power. Don't do both. And then hit enter. Just make sure that these look the same. If you ever get an error, it's because you used a minus here instead of a negative. And so this is equal to 65. All right, down at the bottom section, just a note on these, G plus H is in parentheses. So it means I'm going to add it first and then cube it. So be very, very careful about the way it's written. So it says G is 2. So we plug in. So we do 2 plus and this is -3, and I'm going to keep that in parentheses, and I'm going to raise it to the third power, or cubic. Cubic means three-dimensional. So we're going to go over here. We're going to hit our open parentheses, 2 plus open parentheses again. It's going to look just like this, -3. So back here again, we're going to hit the -3, not the minus. Close, close, and we're going to raise it to the third power. Now, the beauty of never clearing your calculator repeatedly is you can see the problems before, and you can just check for your accuracy. Okay, so I got -1. So my evaluation is -1. What does evaluate mean? It means to solve, to solve. I'm going to do one more with you guys because it's tricky, and that's this one here. So we got h, which is -3, raised to the fourth power. You're just plugging it in, minus h again, which is -3, minus g, which is a 2, all raised to the third power. And if you make sure, and be a little parentheses happy, that's what I mean by having all these parentheses, you can ensure your answer is going to be correct. So open parentheses, -3, reminder, negative, not minus, close parentheses, raised to the fourth, scroll to the right, don't stay up in that top cursor, minus, open parentheses, open again, -3, close, hopefully not going too fast, minus, open parentheses, 2, close parentheses, close it again, and raise it to the third power. Enter. 206. Evaluation is 206. Well, I hope this guys helped you. I'm not flipping over to the back of the assignment, as those are just a few word problems to practice with. And we'll see you on our next video. Until next time, happy solving, and we'll see you. Take care.